Well, obviously that is the wrong banner there because we went from TD3 to Tropical Storm Bret. I apologize for that. I'm still a little bit rusty, having only done this 3 times. But we're waiting on the new advisory on Bret. I don't think it has any bad news. As we go through a hurricane situation or a tropical storm situation or hurricane season, we often have to just think about, is it getting worse, the situation? Is it getting better? Are we about the same? I feel like the situation compared to the way it was 24 hours ago has gotten better. There's certainly no bad news in what we're looking at. Now, we're still going to see some tropical storm conditions, very likely in parts of the islands there, but I think for the most part, we're not going to be dealing with a hurricane. That's good news, so let's take the hurricane thing off the table, and we're not dealing with a U.S. threat, United States threat. But we'll get into all the details in just a second here. Of course, if you like the videos, click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification buttons because that helps elevate it in the YouTube sphere of things, right? So let's first off talk about what I call this our tropical threats and hurricane preps graphic, because basically what it does is it just kind of gets everybody's attention as to who needs to pay attention. And we have different levels of threats. If the threat is none, that means you don't have to do any near-term hurricane preps. Of course, you have to do your seasonal preps, but in terms of getting ready, there goes my mouse, getting ready this weekend, you don't have to do that, or in the next few days even, you don't have to do that. So let's kind of zoom in here and talk about really based on the 11 a.m. advisory, and I think eventually the 5 p.m. advisory, the areas where if any preps are done, they should be done probably tomorrow in anticipation for a strong tropical storm, maybe even just a strong tropical wave, but unlikely dealing with a hurricane. So that's some of the things that we are looking at there with our situation here. And the areas really where it's a moderate threat, and remember when I say threat, I mean, are you going to have to make preparations? Are there going to be power outages widespread? Are there going to be disruptions, things like that? That's the area that where you have to do the most effort to get ready for a storm. And it's only moderate now. If it was high, it would mean we'd need to take our hurricane preparations and get them underway. But it's moderate for much of the Lesser Antilles, basically central and southern, so the southern Leeward Islands as well as the Windward Islands, and that's basically about Guadeloupe all the way down to Grenada there, including Barbados. So these are the areas where we're going to see some gusty winds, some flooding. There's going to be some power outages, but this is not going to be a hurricane event. Areas to the south, Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the Venezuelan coast, the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, as well as Curacao. The threat is low, as well as the Colombian coast there. In addition, the northern Leeward Islands, British Virgin Islands, as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, the southern coast of Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Jamaica, a low threat. It's not zero, but it's low because I think we could see some side effects from Bret, if Bret is even still in play at this point as it moves through. So let's kind of zoom out here and talk about where else there could be the possibility of any threats. And right now it's zero. If you're in the United States, if you're in on the Gulf Coast, in the Gulf of Mexico, up the East Coast, there are no hurricane threats in the next 5 days. Bret is not going to be a hurricane threatening the United States. So let's get that out there. I hate to bury any headlines, and that's the headline, is there is no hurricane threat from Bret to the United States. You can see there, besides Bret, we have our next system. There's Bret, of course, and then there is our strong tropical disturbance there. This could become Tropical Depression number 4, and then it could also become Tropical Storm Cindy, and we'll talk more about that in a second. Once again, we are waiting on the 5 o'clock advisory, and once it comes in, I'll show it to you, but in the meantime, let's take a deeper dive. So here's the overall big picture of what's going on out in the tropics right now. We've got Bret right there. Here is our next tropical disturbance. And then we've got a third tropical wave now coming off of Africa. We'll zoom into that first. You can see it right there. The sun has gone down, of course, over there in the eastern Atlantic. But this is another healthy wave. It's very far to the south. That's what we call 5 degrees latitude. There's 10. So this one is very, very deep in the tropics there. And if we were to zoom back over Africa, we would see that there's even another tropical feature coming across that will be our next tropical wave. Here is the one that's in the middle. You could see that there was a pretty good swirl there, but not a lot of thunderstorm activity right now. It may regain some of the thunderstorm activity, but for now, it's kind of a barren tropical disturbance there. It could, once again, take on the thunderstorm activity. That's what we're watching for. That's what also the models suggest as a possibility. So something to watch with that, and we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Here is Bret today, and you can see quite the difference compared to 24 hours ago, where we had a big area of a round ball of thunderstorms, and through much of the day, the center, and you can see it right there, was exposed. Late in the day, we've had some convection. Thunderstorms go up right over the center. If that were to persist, and when I say persist, I mean many hours. This isn't an instantaneous thing. If that were to persist over 6 to 12 hours, it's possible that Bret could start strengthening. But as long as it doesn't have any thunderstorms right over or very near the center there, it's kind of in a steady state, or even a possibility of a slow weakening state there. Remember, tropical systems, especially in this case tropical storms, they need that persistent thunderstorm activity near or over the center to help them strengthen, and we're not seeing that right now. In fact, it kind of looks like Bret in a way got split in half, with some of those thunderstorms out on one side, other thunderstorms trailing behind it, and as I'll show you here in just a second, some dry air that looks like it may have worked into the system. One of the ways that we can tell that there's a little bit of dry air is some of these rings of showers racing away. Whenever we see that racing away as opposed to being like pulled in, that's an indication of some dry air, and that's creating downdrafts in that overall circulation. So let's show you the water vapor loop here, because there's this dry air that is right just to the south of it, this brownish tannish area there. That is some drier air, and some of that is working its way in. There's a little bit of dry air preceding Bret as well. So the conditions, while they were really favorable for intensification and development a couple of days ago, they're now marginal at best. In fact, they're kind of in that neutral, what we call a neutral situation, where they're really not favoring getting stronger and they're not really favoring getting weaker. They're kind of right on the borderline right there. You can see there's still a little bit, especially in the upper parts of the circulation here, that it's still fairly round. So this wind shear that it's experiencing is in the middle parts of the storm there, not in the upper parts. But over time, and I'll show you here in just a second, there is going to be wind shear that starts blowing, and it will start to blow the top part of the circulation too. And remember, when there's that wind shear, it does two things. It displaces those thunderstorms, the convection away from the center, but it also introduces the possibility of getting dry air entrained into the circulation, which also disrupts it. And there you can see behind Bret there, following along, is what we would say is potential Cindy, or potential tropical depression 4. Once again, it's a little more moist environment, but it doesn't have any convection or thunderstorms ongoing right now. That'll probably start to fire up again tonight. These systems, a lot of times, especially when they're in their initial stage, they kind of do this bursting, or what we call a diurnal cycle, which means that certain times of day and night they favor developing thunderstorms, and then there's other times when they kind of relax, especially in that initial stage. So let's talk about upstream. What is Bret headed towards? There once again is Bret heading to the west northwest. And look at this here. If this was April, this would make sense, but this is June, and this is pretty unusual for June, that we have part of this subtropical branch here, this big upper low that is spinning and working its way to the south. This feature and kind of this whole setup has been responsible for a lot of unusual late season severe weather in the deep south along the Gulf Coast there, and also in Florida. Some pretty bad thunderstorms ongoing right now in Palm Beach County, a few thunderstorms in Broward and Miami-Dade. But But this is a very stormy pattern. Anytime you get what we call bulk shear here, which are stronger winds aloft, and you get the sun that's really bright this time of year and you get instability, you can get some pretty nasty severe weather. So that's what we've seen lately. So that's the downside of this El Nino pattern that we're in, is that we get lots of thunderstorms and severe weather. The upside is that wind shear that's creating all those thunderstorms is also interfering with tropical systems that get close to it. And what's going to happen over the next few days here, this upper level low, it is going to be dropping to the south and southeast. So all of that wind shear around it as well is going to be pushing into the Caribbean, and that is going to interfere with Bret. So let me repeat that. This upper low is moving to the southeast. The wind shear that's around the upper low that's disruptive for tropical systems is also going to sink to the south into the Caribbean, and it is going to create a very hostile environment for Bret once Bret gets over here into the eastern Caribbean. It's possible that Bret is totally wiped out and dissipates before it even crosses the Caribbean. Maybe we just have a tropical wave, or what we would think of as a remnant going across the Caribbean there. But all in all, this is not a bad situation. This is kind of what you hope for as we go into tropical season early, well earlier than normal. So let's take a look at the models here. This is the model tracks for Bret, and then we'll talk about the next system out there, what's called 93, Invest 93. And once again, we're waiting on the advisory to come in, and once it does, we will put that up right away. So here's the latest model tracks. And once again, that little circle area there, that is the representation of the European model. And the reason I put it on there is because even though we have the ECM European tracker here, as you'll see as we go forward in time, the tracker itself, this thing that tracks where that center of circulation is in the European, it loses it. That's how weak Bret, or what's left of Bret, becomes. So I've got that round thing there. That's kind of representation of Bret. Here we are. This is Thursday afternoon, so the bad weather's coming into the islands there. You'll notice at this point there are no members going to the north there. Everybody's to the west. The European advertised this very strongly. The UK Met, the United Kingdom model, advertised it. The CTCX, that's a Navy model, that was advertising it. Only the GFS and what I call its children models, which are the H-Wharf and the H-Mon, they all wanted to go out to the Atlantic there to the north, hit the northern islands there. That is not going to be what's going to happen. The euro is going to win the day here with the UK and the CTCX. Let's go forward into time here, and you can see the models in very good agreement. Now this CLP5, that's what we call the Clipper. That's a climatology model. So that's just kind of a reference point there. We're going to disregard the H-Wharf there because it has been consistently too far north. The GFS is now kind of in here with the European models and everything else. Now here comes the advisory in. So what we will do is I will wait for that to finish. You'll hear like a little chime here in the background, and then I will show you that. But that's basically the suite of models here. Now remember, by the time we get to this point here, these little trackers here are probably tracking just a tropical wave or the remnant. They're not tracking a hurricane. They're not even really tracking a tropical storm here towards Nicaragua in Central America. So and there's the advisory. So that's what we're seeing there. So let me get set up here, and we will go ahead and get to our new advisory. All right, here it is at 5 o'clock, the new advisory, and there it is crawling on the bottom of the screen, so you can kind of keep the latest there. So the Hurricane Center is saying that Bret is a little bit stronger. So I think we were up, 5 miles an hour? Yeah, so we've gone from 40 miles an hour to 45 miles an hour. Also, a tropical storm watch is issued for Barbados. No surprise there. We're within the 48-hour time frame when watches start getting issued. And then probably at 11 o'clock tonight, we'll start to see other watches issued for other parts of the Windward and the Leeward Islands there. No hurricane watch, tropical storm watch, meaning, of course, that tropical storm conditions are possible, not expected, but possible in the next 48 hours. Now, when we get 12 hours away, so maybe tomorrow morning, These will be upgraded from tropical storm watch to tropical storm warning. And a warning means tropical storm conditions are expected, they're likely. So, but once again, no hurricane watches, only tropical storm watch for Barbados. So let's kind of take apart the advisory here. You are seeing it with me right now. So a little bit stronger, winds at 45 miles an hour, moving to the west at 18. I put this here, this value, some of these folks are like, what does that 280 degrees mean? So if you think of a compass has 360 degrees, right? And due west, if it's moving straight west, and kind of a reference there on straight west is one of these latitude lines there. So that is straight west. But 280 is 10 degrees higher than 270. So it's a little bit to the north of due west. So it's kind of west. I kind of forget always this one point, but it's like north by west northwest, something like that. So anyway, it's just slightly north of due west, but it's not quite to west northwest. Moving at 18, so that's slightly slower now than what we had 24 hours ago. 24 hours ago, we had 21 miles an hour. Moving to the west at 18 and about 835 miles east of the Leeward Islands as of 5 o'clock. So let's take a look at the forecast track here. And there we are through 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon and then to 2 a.m. Friday overnight. So this is Thursday overnight. This is Thursday daytime, Thursday overnight. And so the closest approach to Barbados will be during the afternoon on Thursday based on this advisory. Of course, the advisories could change. There could be updates. But right now, that's the time frame there. And then during the evening and overnight hours Thursday through the islands there, and then coming into the Caribbean Sea by Friday morning. You can see we're north of Trinidad and Tobago here. We're north of the southern Windward Islands there. This yellow area, that's where tropical storm conditions are possible. And we have no red here because there's no hurricane conditions expected here or possible according to this advisory. Let's go a little bit more forward into time here. And there we are as to the 1 p.m. Saturday, and I want to see, I've got now, one of the things is I've got my times here kind of onto the local time zones. Let me make sure that I've got, I just want to check on one thing here because we're looking at this together. Okay, so the 120-hour position here, that is Saturday right here. That's the end of the track. Now, normally, the next advisory, we would think it's going to go farther, but basically the hurricane specialist, Robbie Berg at the National Hurricane Center, he has his 5-day position here. He said system dissipates. So that is the end of the track. If there were any more points to add on, they wouldn't add it on because that's where the last point is. And you can see here that also the tropical storm conditions, as the system winds down, those slowly decrease. Any threats to the northern Leeward Islands there? No. Could be some gusty winds, could be some squalls just because of the low pressure system, as well as the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the coasts here, the southern coast of Hispaniola, as well as the ABC Islands and the northern coast of Colombia and Venezuela. This is going to be maybe a rainy, windy event just on the outskirts, but it's not going to be a big event there. So all in all, good news. Once again, is this going to be a threat? Is this going to kind of come back together? I don't see that as a possibility. I hate to never say never when we're dealing with tropical systems. You know, I've learned after doing this for 26 years now, never say never. But I've also learned that there are situations where literally a tropical system would have to defy the laws of physics to come back. And in this case, that would be the case. It would have to defy the laws of physics, and that's not going to happen. This is not going to be a threat to the United States. All of the folks that said that you have plans, let's talk about your plans first, because a lot of folks were saying, Craig, what about, I'm going to the islands this week. You know what? Go to the islands. Keep your plans. You might have a day of some nasty weather, especially on Thursday into Friday in the Eastern Islands there, but I wouldn't cancel my plans. I would just go and expect, it's not going to be maybe your best vacation, but it's not going to be terrible. This is not a hurricane coming into the islands. For those who have cruise ship plans that transit these areas, you are good to go. It may be a little bit rougher than normal, but you know what? The wind blows across the Caribbean Sea a lot of the year, and There's gales without tropical systems a lot of the time. So nothing exceptionally worse than normal. Do not cancel your cruise ship plans if you have cruise ship plans. In fact, for anybody that's thinking, I don't know, don't change your plans. I would just kind of leave them in place because it does not look like the type of situation that would cause cancellations, things like that. So that's kind of that for Bret. Now I do want to say one thing, and then we'll talk briefly about the other thing that's out there, Invest 93. All this stuff is anxiety producing. You know what? Let me talk about 93 first, because I know some people are like, well, I just kind of want to know about that other thing, right? Let me back up here, one graphic, see if I can do that. So that is okay. So there's 93 right there. No, that's 90. That's Bret. Okay, there's 93. So this is our tropical disturbance that's out there. That's Bret. There's our tropical disturbance. So we're going to go forward into time here. And pay no attention, of course, to Bret over there. And you can see the models basically do this curve, and they're all in pretty good agreement on this curve. And I know a lot of folks would say, well, Craig, the last one, many of the models had curving, and look where it's going now, right? Because there was the GFS and stuff, and it was going like that, and look where it's going. Bret's going there. So I understand you saying, well, look at that. Is this going to do like the previous one? No, in the essence that it's not going to turn due west. But that being said, and this is why I think folks in the northern islands here need to pay attention, there could be what we call track slide. And track slide means is that we're going to keep this curve like that, but maybe this thing doesn't start curving soon enough down here, and it kind of works on to the west. So it's basically we're just taking this whole curve that we think is going to continue, and we're shifting it west. And now we've got a track that's coming much closer to the islands. I think that's a possibility. So folks in the islands, the northern islands here, you're not in the green, you're not in the clear. It's something that I think we want to just kind of keep our eyes on here with 93, potentially tropical depression number 4 or tropical storm Cindy down the road. Okay, now I just briefly want to address this one thing about, I know tropical systems create a lot of anxiety. Trust me, I feel it from all of you folks that comment online, on Twitter. I just feel it. And I feel the anxiety too when there is a reason to be anxious. This, with the exception of the Eastern Caribbean there, where there's going to need to be preparations for a tropical storm, this in the United States and elsewhere is not a reason to be anxious. And unfortunately, because it's already so active in the Atlantic, I think we're going to have lots of opportunities to be anxious, and a few of those will be the real deal where this may impact us. This is not the case. This is not the time to lose sleep. This is not the time to fret, to worry, to any of that. This is not going to be a system that impacts the United States. So let's everybody just take a breath. We're going to get through this one. Just no sweat, no problem. This one's going to be a breeze. And once again, except for the folks in the Eastern Caribbean islands there, it's going to be kind of a rough tropical storm. But there's going to be more threats this season, and we need to just save our energy, save our strength, and we'll save it all for getting through when we really, really do have a threat. Okay. Tomorrow afternoon, I've got some things going on, so I don't know if I'll be able to make our 4:30 appointment here, but basically that's it is what it is. I will try to post something later in the day. Besides doing this, I do have other things in life that sometimes really are important, and some of those things are coming up. But I'll hopefully be able to share that. One is, of course, the American Meteorological Society conference that's coming up as well. So anyway, in the meantime, everybody stay safe, and I hope you enjoyed today's Tropical Tracks.